Welcome to The Hatch. I'm Sammy Roth.
I'm Rosie Murphy. Welcome back to our fourth episode. This week we are talking about Season 1, Episode 5, White Rabbit.
That is an episode about Jack. It's the first episode about Jack. It's the one where he chases the ghost, something of his dead dad, Christian Shephard, around the jungle.
We also have a little bit more from that interview we did with Jack Bender.
So let's get to it. Okay, let's get into White Rabbit. Rosie, what is your hot take about this episode?
So, Sawyer, at one point, is sitting on the beach reading a book, and that book is Watership Down. Have you read Watership Down?
I am very uncultured. I have not.
It's so good. I think I have it. You can borrow it.
Okay.
We read it in my 10th grade English class, and it is this kind of fable of a novel. It's about this society of rabbits. And they're
in an episode called White Rabbit.
Yeah, and their like colony is wiped out somehow. I forget how, but they basically have to go like searching the English countryside for this new colony in which to settle. And they meet all of these other rabbit colonies that are all like their own little kind of dystopia, and it's phenomenal. But it struck me as funny that Sawyer was reading this book. I don't know if that was intentional, if they were trying to like speak to some sort of metaphor about this group of people on a journey to find their new home and encountering all this stuff, or yes, White Rabbit and bunny rabbits, etc. But great book, highly recommend.
Anyway, my hot take is much sillier compared to yours. I just thought it was so hilarious and unnecessary when Jack starts smashing his dad's coffin to bits.
There's just a convenient like piece of steel that he can pick up and smack.
And it's just this like poignant moment, and he opens the coffin and it's dramatic and his dad's body isn't there, and you think it's like, what emotions is he experiencing? And then he just like goes apeshit.
Yeah, and it's just melodrama. Like we have been very open with our, various dislikes of Jack as a character.
We're sorry, Matthew Fox.
Just is so melodramatic in certain moments, and this is one of them.
Some kind.
Well, that's a good segue into our discussion of characters, in which I was going to bring up Jack.
Of course, let's talk about Jack.
So Jack. I left this episode wondering, what is it exactly that gets Jack from point A to point B? Like, what is it that turns him from this man who's sort of rejecting this mantle that's been thrust upon him and doesn't want to help anybody find the water and, just needs to go sort of deal with his own stuff? Is it just that speech that Locke gives to him? Is it finding the water? Is it smashing his dad's coffin? Like, what is the thing that flips that switch that sends Jack back to give the live together, die alone speech, which of course is so iconic? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I don't have an answer off the bat, but let's like puzzle this out.
Yes.
So
so then what else? So then he spends a while chasing this ghost of his father, and then he encounters John Locke, who fortunately is out searching for water and is there to save his life. And then Locke gives him this very like spirit guide kind of pep talk where he says like, you need to finish what you started. What else does he say? Well, Jack says, I'm not a leader, and Locke says, well, they treat you like one, and
which is kind of weird because I'd forgotten that there was this period at the beginning of the show where Jack is like not comfortable leading everyone.
Because the whole show is, well, from here on out, the whole show has Jack in a leadership role.
Yeah. I also thought it was just, this is sidetrack, but like Locke giving him the pep talk, Jack seemed like super vulnerable in that scene, right? Like the way the camera angle was on him and he was kind of looking up sort of forlornly.
Well, yeah, because Locke sort of climbs up the side of that little ridge and is sort of squatting down, talking literally down to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was well done, I thought. And this is very like Locke emerging as sort of this spiritual leader.
Yeah.
I thought. Like this is where he's talking about, oh, you're chasing the white rabbit. Like, let's entertain. Let's do this thought experiment. What if it is true? You say it can't be true, but come on. Mm-hmm. Anything. Of course he says, I've looked into the island and...
Amazing line.
What's the line?
I've looked into the eye of this island and what I saw was beautiful.
The eye of this island. Yeah, which we don't get a lot of in that the previous Locke episode. He's the hunter in that episode.
I want to talk more about that scene.
Okay.
But maybe later.
Is that your third point? Okay.
I wanted to bring that up.
But yeah, so then Jack goes on from there, continues on his hero's journey or whatever, finds the water, and then finds the coffin, then does the smashing, and then
suddenly he's
okay. It seems goes straight back to the beach because it's still nighttime. You know, it seems like there's no passage of time there. Like, what snaps in him? Does he feel like he's some sense of release after smashing his father's coffin, or does he just realize, like, holy shit, I found water, I can save everybody?
Yeah, I do really like this question of why is Jack suddenly ready to lead? Because it's important, but it's pretty unclear.
And it's sudden. Like, it really is like he smashes the coffin and then appears at the beach 20 minutes later.
And maybe this is a hindsight thing, but I guess I have trouble kind of buying into, like, Jack not feeling like he can lead the group.
Same. I never quite bought that. I mean, I get that he has all of these insecurities that were, like, imbued in him by his father, but he just so clearly, like, the opening montage is him saving lives, like, so clearly established as the protagonist and the leader, for lack of a better word. I mean, he leads that hike the very first day, which is the first venture of any kind. Like,
And he gives Kate the speech about count to 5 and deal with your fear, and he, in the opening montage, like, very clearly feels comfortable telling off Boone, like, you have no idea how to save someone's life, like, just leave this to me.
Yeah, it's so, it really, that's a really good point. It really is hard to buy him as a reluctant leader. I mean, I get sort of wanting to shirk responsibility, or certainly feeling responsible when the woman drowns in the opening of this episode, but Jack is...
He's the hero.
He's the hero. He is so obviously the hero.
Maybe the stuff with his dad brings out the insecurities in him. Maybe when his dad shows up, it's like he's taken back to, that moment when he was a kid and his dad is telling him you don't have what it takes.
So it definitely adds a layer of complexity. But at the moment of the plane crash, he's on his way. He's like 8 hours from burying his father. So, like, why has that been suppressed for the last 6 days? Is it just that he's been in some kind of shock, or he's been so focused on saving lives and feeding people that he hasn't been processing? Because presumably on the plane, I mean, in the airport, we see him before he boards the plane almost having a breakdown to this poor check-in attendant, just begging her to let his father on the plane. And that was like eight hours before this plane crashed. And I totally get, like, the plane crashes and you're freaking out and you're in survival mode, at least for a couple of days. And I guess...
That makes a certain amount of sense.
And then I guess his failure to save the woman who drowns...
Coupled with Ghost Dad showing up.
Well, yeah, but the failure to save the woman is sort of his first failure of any kind.
Oh, that's... Yeah, it is.
Right? And maybe because that's his thing, right? Like, you don't have what it takes.
Well,
and
no,
that's
he couldn't save the marshal.
Oh, yeah.
Lest we forget.
That puts a hole in that theory.
Letting go. I'm still thinking about the saving the marshal versus the woman who died thing. There's the whole thing at the ending with Christian is, like, you need to learn to let it go, right? Like, let go of all of that stuff.
Who says this? In what?
Christian to Jack in the church.
Oh, yes.
You got to learn to let it go. I mean, that's like one of the final lesson. And so...
Good lesson.
It is. And... so maybe there is something to that with the, with the marshal, at least, he tried everything. He left nothing on the table. He couldn't do it. But when he didn't save the woman who was drowning, he didn't try. And that was something that he couldn't forgive himself for.
Yeah, that's what sort of ate him up. And we see this, the other big Jack saving a life plotline here is Boone, which is coming up at the end of the season, in which he definitely pulls out all the stops, right? I mean, that's like a 3-episode arc of trying to save Boone's life, and he has a lot of trouble letting go.
He does. That is a hard storyline to watch. Yeah, it's hard,
because by then you kind of like Boone.
And then in the end of the show, just to continue on this riff, ultimately Jack has to let go of, like, his man of science rationality thing and just accept the...
So that is why... So the first time I watched Lost, I watched to the end of season 5. And it was the year after the final season had aired. And everyone I knew had hated the finale.
I still don't understand how you waited.
And so I stopped at the end of season 5. And I stopped for like 2 years.
Makes no sense.
Until I got a Netflix account and I had easy access to season 6. Because one of the things that happens at the end of season 5 is that Jack takes some kind of step of faith. Like, he says, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try because I believe it's going to work. And that's basically the first and only time, not only, but the first time that we see Jack, like, make a faith-based decision instead of an altruistic or a sort of situational decision. And that, to me, was like a great moment of character resolution for Jack.
So you were just satisfied and done with Jack?
Yeah, because I felt like he had sort of ascended into this sort of higher plane of existence, or somehow he had matured. And I was okay with that. And I know, like, lots of terrible things happened in the end of season 5, and I did want to know what happened to Sawyer and everybody else. But with that at least was like a good resolution of Jack's character for me.
That's totally fair. And you're making me really think now, because acts of, in a way, coming back and agreeing to lead these people, I mean, that's sort of an act of faith in itself, right? Because there are 46 of them, and they're stranded on an island, and nobody's coming to rescue them, and, you know, they're fighting over the water, and, you know, a woman goes to swim and just, you know, drowns. And, I mean, it's kind of an impossible task when you think about it. Like, how is one person supposed to lead this group and ensure their survival and, you know, really, like, be able to express confidence to them, like, we're going to get through this, we're going to be okay, you know, we're going to live together. Maybe there's something there. Maybe he...
Yeah, because it is such a hopeless situation. Like, they are trapped on an island with little hope of rescue, with... I mean, yeah, it would take a lot of faith to do anything, but just sort of give up at that point, I would think.
Right, and the last thing Jack confronted was, as we talked about, like, the woman drowned and he couldn't save her, and all she was doing was going out for a swim, and he just doesn't want to deal with anything else. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some part of him that's like, you know, I can't do this because it's impossible, because nobody can do this. I don't know how that gets resolved by beating up his dad's coffin.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because I think from the viewer's perspective, Jack is the default leader. We assume that he's going to be the leader. And it's surprising when he isn't. But maybe from his perspective, I think what you're saying is, like, no one can be the leader. Who can possibly be the leader in this bizarre and, like, unprecedented situation? Well, this is maybe the most sympathy I've ever had for Jack.
This is good. We're learning.
Yeah, this is a good conversation.
Well, you know, we talked a couple of weeks ago about how it would have been interesting if Kate had been the leader. And there's that scene in this episode where Sawyer gives her that sheriff badge and says, because you're the new sheriff in town.
Oh, yeah. And
so I wonder if the idea is they're still kind of playing with, like, is Jack really going to be the leader, or is Kate going to step up?
I think it's pretty obvious. Jack at this point has given like 2 or 3 rousing group speeches. And no one else has given any. Unless you want to count John Locke saying, we hunt.
I was pretty roused by that.
Well, duh. But...
Yeah. So it's obvious to us, but not to Jack.
If this is sort of Jack's first act of faith, if we want to treat this as sort of Jack's character arc, you've got to give John Locke a lot of credit.
Well, yeah.
Because Jock,
let's not make that his nickname.
Oh, God. Because John Locke... So I, like, in my head, I just refer to John Locke as, like, the spirit guide. Because he sort of takes on this persona of, like... Shaman's not the right word, but sort of like a faith leader.
Yeah.
For lack of... At least until Mr. Echo shows up, you know, you get other elements of that, but... And Jack is maybe his first, not convert, but sort of the first person he, like, imparts that faith to.
You're right, and that is totally communicated in the way they filmed that scene, as we've discussed. Where
John speaking down to Jack, and
Jack's like looking up at him like a saint.
Yeah, and is he sort of like backlit? Like, is he? No, it's daytime.
Can I bring up Christian Shephard?
Please.
I mean, because we'll keep talking about Jack, but like,
Please.
So I'm a big fan of Christian Shephard.
Okay. Despite his like hit you over the head with the analogy name.
I love that.
Oh my gosh.
And I love that nobody comments on it till the finale, but that's another story. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel like this is obvious after having seen the whole show, but like I feel like symbolically he's very important, and you start to see that. I mean, the scene with the flashback with him and Jack as a kid, he's so shitty to his kid.
Oh yes, truly, yes.
Truly horrible dad. But between that and the fact that he's this ghost walking around the island, like leading Jack to water, maybe. I just think it gives you this sense right away, like, hey, there's something super symbolically significant about this character, and you don't really get to see a lot of him, and you hardly get to hear him talk, but you know that he's super in Jack's psyche.
Yeah.
And Jack is the hero of this show, and he's connected to the island somehow. And so I guess I just enjoy that this is our first taste of, like, this character who you can sort of feel something's happening with this guy, but you have really no clue what it is until much, much later.
Yeah. Can I segue this into the thing I wanted to bring up in hindsight?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the hindsight segment for new listeners, where we talk about what is different in hindsight, having seen the whole show.
Now that we know how it all ends. So at this point, is it possible that Christian's body is being animated by the smoke monster?
I think that is entirely likely.
Right, because his body is gone, and it makes more sense. Well, not more sense, but it makes sense that this creature that inhabits bodies would have picked his, because, oh, look, they brought a dead body to the island. And in that way, it is the Man in Black, the smoke monster, etc., who is leading Jack into the jungle.
Everything that happened here happened for a reason, right? Is it a coincidence that agent at the airport let Jack's dad's body onto the plane? She wasn't going to.
And we don't find out why. We see Jack sort of beg.
No, it's like documents. He doesn't have the documents.
Right. But then we don't find out what changes her mind.
Right.
It's just Jack delivers that "I need to bury my father" speech, which...
Do not mistake coincidence for fate.
Who says that?
Mr. Echo, eventually.
Oh, Mr. Echo.
Just saying, maybe it was fate.
Yeah, so like surely the smoke monster... Not surely, but I think it's a safe assumption that this is the first time we see this particular capability of our friend, the smoke monster.
I think so too. Whether or not the people making the show knew all of the Man in Black stuff, I think so.
Right.
Can I add one more thing about Christian Shephard? And this is probably of no interest to anyone, but we'll cut it out if it's boring. I used to participate in Lost screenwriting contests.
What?
Yeah.
That was a thing?
There were a couple of websites that did it where it was like during the show where you would write episodes for the next season and try to build out a season like competing against other people.
So it was like competitive fan fiction.
Yeah, sort of.
But it was sort of okay.
Yeah, it was basically. Have I not told you this?
No.
Okay, so this is news. And the episode that I wrote, and they were like short episodes, like don't write 50 or 60 pages, but that I was the most excited about, and I think was the best one I wrote, was about Christian. And I did an episode where you get all of his flashbacks and learn about his life.
Oh.
And the one thing that I did that I was really proud of that I thought of in this episode was I expanded that sequence where he talks to Jack when he's a kid. And I started it when he was in the surgery that he's describing.
Where he's operating on the kid.
And the kid dies.
Yeah.
And I kind of twisted it, and he was really, really unhappy about the kid dying. He couldn't handle it.
Oh.
And then later when he's drinking and being a shit to Jack, that's him trying to cope himself.
To sort of drown his own sorrows.
Drown his own sorrows and kind of pass the blame onto his, well, I can handle this and you can't. But really what he's feeling in that moment is, I can't. I don't have what it takes.
And he's projecting.
And to be honest, watching that scene, I think that kind of stands up well as a theory about what's going on in his head.
I don't think we have any evidence to disprove that.
But it would explain why he's being such a jerk.
Maybe you were onto something.
Maybe. Okay, so should we get to Jack Bender?
Yeah, let's hear a couple additional thoughts from director Jack Bender. Who,
yes.
Executive producer on the show, directed Walkabout, did not direct White Rabbit.
But directed many classic episodes and every season finale and is a wealth of knowledge about these things.
As you know by now, we interviewed him at his home in Los Angeles. You will hear a fountain in the background. You may hear some dogs.
I don't want to ask the question of, what did you know and when did you know it, because everyone asks that question. I think it's sort of been talked to death. I do wonder, when you were in seasons 1 and 2 and maybe 3 and building up these mysteries and posing these big questions,
right?
Was there ever any any worry or any conversation about what are people going to think if we don't tie this up in a nice bow?
Well, I think that the press certainly busted us at times for having no end game in sight, and I think Damon always did. I heard different versions of it throughout the year, and every year I'd get together with Damon and Carlton before we started. And I always described it as like being at the top of a mountain. I'm not a skier, but being at the top of a mountain, and if the beginning of the season is the top of the mountain, which you could look at it backwards, but not if you're skiing, and the end of the season is the warm lodge at the end after you've skied down the hill, there's this slalom course, and all the flags are different episodes. And along the way, I knew that we were starting here and ending there, and along the way there were going to be these big moments where this happens, and this happens, and that happens. So I knew the obstacle course and what it was going to be in the big picture. But then along the way, things would change, because one of the great things about episodic television, if you're a creator and a writer, is that, like with Michael Emerson, you could see an actor, you go, oh my God, we got to make more out of him, and that throws the whole show into a direction you didn't expect.
I can't imagine what it would have been like.
That's
without
right.
Ben.
Well,
Imagine.
I'm sure Damon and Carlton had a plan. The numbers and Hurley came out of a desperation move.
No kidding.
Yeah, there was. I remember hearing this where I think we couldn't get an actor back, or something happened, or blah, blah, blah. There was some reason what they were planning on doing wasn't going to work. And they were spitballing different ideas, and I think Carlton came up with, well, what if there's a lottery ticket and a number, and suddenly the numbers end up playing this massive plot in our show, which is one of the great things about episodic creative storytelling. It's like writing a novel where every episode is a chapter, and you can have things happen. At the beginning of the season, I don't think that was in anybody's head. It was desperation. And I know actually, whether it's the flash forward or different things like that, things come out of cornering you creatively, both as a director and as a writer, that you would never have anticipated, which is part of the fun.
So we've been talking for close to an hour. Do you have time for one or two more questions?
I sure do.
Awesome. I am interested in talking about the emotional elements of the show, and you brought up Jack and Kate and them being a central element, and I think it was so interesting to me that the ending was disappointing to so many people, and you made the comment earlier, the show was as much about monsters on the inside as on the outside. Could you talk? How did you guys do that along the way, sort of trying to balance between being this show about these mysteries and these questions versus being a show that was about people? Because I think we all sort of realized after that people were watching two very different shows along the way, or at least thought they were.
Yeah. Well, I think that, first of all, we became the first. I think we were like Obama was the first internet president. I think that we were the first big internet show in that people would talk about and dissect Lost after we aired for a week, and people would write about it.
I remember that.
Yeah. Talk about the electronic, water cooler. In fact, I'll just digress for one second. I painted the hatch painting down in the hatch, and I decided I'm a painter, and I decided, you know what? However long Desmond was down here and the guy who came before, they probably went crazy. Maybe one of them painted a vision, a portrait, a mural of stuff, and we had a wall that it would fit on. And I knew some iconic things that were coming. I knew that Mr. Echo was coming. I knew there was a storm. So basically I came up with this very, like most of my paintings, funky, rough, put a dot here and then took the tube and made a circle and a circle and a circle and a circle. And I went, oh, that's cool, these concentric circles. And then in Entertainment Weekly, when they featured the hatch painting and what it meant, those circles represented the reverberations of the lost city of Atlantis.
Huh.
When in fact, they were just circles of purple paint, right? So much for, being interpreted, and we often didn't know if we were making Lost or Lost was making us, if we were writing Lost or directing Lost or it was directing us. And when Damon was describing to me, we were doing publicity in London, and we walked from the Tate Modern back to our hotel. And as we were walking, he told me the story of the final season, beat by beat.
Wait, when was this?
This was the season, the summer before we shot our last year.
Okay.
And as he did every year, Damon and Carlton would take me through what the season was going to be. But this was the end game. And he's going through all of the episodes. And then he says, okay, let me talk about Locke. And he's telling me about Locke's story and where that ends. And we're walking, and I'm listening, and I look up, and I have a picture of it I'll show you before you go. I look up, and I said, Damon, stop. And he said, what? Why? And I point up, and we are standing under a pub, and the sign is called The Walkabout.
Huh.
That's the name of the pub. As he's telling me about what Locke's endgame is, his story. And Damon goes, holy shit. And I said, exactly. And that was one of those Lostian moments. And I said, take a picture of me under here, which he did. No, I took a picture of him first. I said, get under here. I took a picture. And then I said, now take a picture of me. He takes a picture of me, and he goes, oh my God. And I said, what? And in the picture of me, there's a guy in a wheelchair wheeling by. It was just one of those extraordinary moments. So back to the point of the ending of Lost. I know that a lot of the internet fanatics were looking for some big uber reveal. When the phone call rings at some secret CIA underground in Nevada going, they found the fucking island, what are we going to do? Blah, 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 blah. And then you cut to boom, 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 and you go up in space, and it's all the fucking I'm saying that too much, but they're all going bang, 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 bang. One of those. And we didn't do that. And I was very proud of that. Damon is a humanist. And I'm sure Leftovers is very similar. He delves into the dark and the light of us humans. And that's where he is interested in living and writing. And Lost was always about who these people were and how they lived their lives and how they died. And anybody who thinks, because Jack was laying in the same position when he let go with the dog in the jungle, that it was all in his mind, the whole show, it wasn't. He died in a similar way, but everything that happened actually happened. Emerson and Hurley really ran the island for those few years. It all happened, and it was the show was about this group of humans and how they connected and how they lived.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to some of the people who were looking for the big uber reveal, I mean, do you think it's fair to say that there were a lot of elements throughout the show that were very layered and very deep and sort of, I think, fairly could be interpreted as making you think there was some secret message going on
No
here.
question.
Yeah.
No question. I think that we walked that tightrope, and sometimes, who created the smoke monster, and and who and what, and really who's in charge, and what is this security system, and all that stuff. We definitely dipped into that kind of storytelling where you could definitely believe it was going to go into the world of Marvel, and it didn't.
So I am probably going to sound like such a shill for the show, but I agree with them. I think that I was kind of like one of those people he called internet fanatics at the time. I was on the forums and everything, and at the time I was a little disappointed that there was not the big tie everything in a bow wrap up. But the more time has passed, the more I'm glad that they didn't do that. I think that the times that they did provide really specific answers to questions, it was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, the one everybody always brings up is the polar bear. It's
Right.
either people who didn't finish the show who say, like, well, they never explained the polar bear. Or people who did finish who say, like, really? The polar bear was just like a weird Dharma experiment? Like, that feels like a dumb way to tie up that loose end.
Right.
Which I don't necessarily agree with, but those seem to be the lines of thought.
Well, the fun is in the mystery, right?
I think so.
The fun with the hatch was not knowing what it was or what it was doing there or what's going to happen when you don't push the button. And once you know all those things, it's like a little less interesting.
Yeah, and I'm totally fine with believing that everything that happened actually happened, but I am still going to maintain my belief that most of this is like an allegory for, some sort of purgatory, some sort of passing through to get to the other side or whatever.
Maybe that's why Lost is great. It's an allegory, but it's also real.
Exactly. And like if it is sort of allegorical, then like not everything has to be put there by something else. Like there can just be these tasks that you have to overcome or these sort of things that you have to accomplish, and who cares where they come from?
Yeah.
But
No, you're totally right.
you folks probably disagree with us, and that's okay, because I think this is sort of the minority opinion among, maybe not diehard Lost fans, but among viewers.
And by the way, if you disagree with stuff that we're talking about, or if you want us to share your commentary on the shows, we have a phone number. It is 954-6-DHARMA. And any week that you want, watch the episode that we're watching, call in and give us your hot take.
Yeah, it actually forwards to my Google Voice account and to Sammy's cell phone. So Sammy might pick up the phone and you guys can have a little spat about...
I will try not to pick up the phone. I'll let you go to voicemail.
But we really would love to play those on the show. And just call, introduce yourself, and, rant for as long as you want. We really don't mind.
We might not play it all. That's enough for this week. Thanks very much for listening in. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/thehatchpodcast, facebook.com/thehatchpodcast.
Yes, we already mentioned the number, but again, give us a call, 9546-DHARMA. Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen, and I don't think we've mentioned this on the show yet. Our cover art, that real cool cover art that shows me and Sammy gazing down into the hatch, was designed by Danny Roth.
And that is my brother, and it's very sweet of you to mention that.
Shout out to Danny.
Rate and review us on iTunes.
Oh, yes.
And namaste.